like to, I think it's gently challenge the way we do things and why we do them. And hopefully the challenging is encouraging people to be more open to different ways of considering things. And so we were talking about 2045, right? And so if everything is really overstimulated and noisy and our health is taking a toll, which is trending as if it will, and then it becomes like a public health measure. So now it would be maybe gimmicky or good for some people, but perhaps in 20 years' time it won't. And so why wouldn't we play with the idea of doing some of these things now?
My name is Simon Waller, and this is the Future with Friends podcast, a show where I make zero attempt to try and predict the future, even though I'm a trained futurist, and instead I enlist my friends to do it for me. Thankfully, I have some very smart and insightful friends. Some of them are best-selling authors. Most will be considered leading thinkers in their field of expertise. I guarantee that every single one of them will have compelling and unique insights to share about what might happen next. Each episode, I invite a friend onto the show to explore the future of anything that they would like. I then task them to go away and create a short scenario about that future set at least 5 years from now, something that captures their hopes and dreams or maybe their fears and concerns. And then over the course of the show, we dissect that scenario. We start to think about the critical uncertainties, the alternate possibilities, and the decisions that we can make today to create the future that we want tomorrow. Welcome to The Future with Friends.
Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of The Future with Friends. This was a wonderful conversation that I got to have with my friend Amy Scott. I've known Amy for over a decade, and she's one of the most outgoing, one of the biggest personalities, one of the most joyous people that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And it was somewhat of an irony that the topic that Amy chose to explore when she could explore the future of anything was the future of silence. This was a challenging conversation for both Amy and myself. For anyone who's met either of us, you'd be aware that we like our words. We both speak from stages. We're very good at filling the silences and the pauses and the gaps in conversations with something else that needs to be said. But this perhaps in a way speaks to one of the challenges of the modern world, where we are so inundated with information, where every pause gets filled and we do not have time to reflect, to connect, to contemplate. And Amy brings up in her scenario some real big questions about what does that actually mean for us in terms of both our mental health and well-being, but also the effectiveness of the decisions we make and the organizations we operate in. Amy and I do our best to embrace some of the principles that she espouses in the scenario. We try and bring a few pauses and silences into our conversation with varying levels of success. As I said, this is not necessarily a strong point for either of us. But I did feel after this conversation, after the podcast recording, refreshed as a result of that small shift in dynamic. I'm going to leave it to you now to have a listen to the conversation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it with the incredible Amy Scott. Hello, and welcome to episode 16 of The Future with Friends. I've been joined today by a wonderful, dear, and incredibly vivacious friend of mine, Amy Scott. We've just been cackling to ourselves in the little bit of green room space we had before the episode started, which brings back so many wonderful memories of meeting Amy. Do you remember, Amy, when we met? Do you have any recollection of those days? It was a while ago now.
Yeah, I do. I'm trying to decide whether I saw you across the room at a mutual. Oh no, that sounded creepy. Then we were like, what sort of friendship is this? Whether it was like, full. Actually, I think it was when we went, because we had a mutual coach, right? Like we were part of this program.
Yes, and it was
What was it?
Laurel. Well,
Oh,
I got introduced you to Laurel by Laurel McClay.
oh, beautiful Laurel. Yes.
I know. Yes,
Oh,
she was my coach at Thought Leaders, and I
right.
don't know if was she your coach as well, or did she know? I
Yeah.
think she knew you beforehand because
Well, I was
obviously
so
in New Zealand, there's only 7 people in New Zealand, and you all know each other.
and we're all related, which is why we're all genius. So good. Yeah, no, she was my coach for a bit too, because I really wanted to get into thought leaders because I desperately wanted Jason to. I didn't even know who Net Church was or Peter Cook. I didn't know them. I just wanted to be, mentored by Jason Fox, beautiful Dr. Jason Fox. And so I was so keen. I did a bit of pre-work before I got in with Laurel. So
And we both ended up being mentored by Jason, and
we
then
did.
going hiking with Jason
We did.
through the mountains in New Zealand,
I know.
where embarrassingly you had to carry half my pack off the mountain because I went hiking with a broken back and kind of neglected to tell people until 3 days in.
I know. Like, were you deliberately wanting to make it harder for yourself? Like that wasn't just a Sunday walk, like a cruisy, we were right up in snow and climbing up. Oh my, I
Look,
just
it's a
remember.
combination of factors, Amy. I think one of them was that I probably underestimated the extent of the injury. I overestimated my own capability. I underestimated how hard the hike was going to be.
Yeah, I think beautiful Pat deliberately didn't tell us. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
why we weren't aware when you think about like he is a mountaineer. Like, what were we thinking? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So to give a little context to the people listening, there
he's
was a group of us that met at a place called Thought Leaders, who were all being mentored by a wonderful person, Dr. Jason Fox, who's been on the podcast previously. And in that group was another guy, Pat Hollingworth, who coincidentally I went to high school with. We're in the same year at high school together. Um, and whereas some of us went off and you went traveling through Europe, his idea of a good time was to go hiking, and climb mountains. And so I think when I was kind of partying in London, he was on the top of Mount Everest at like the age of like 22 or 23. And, and
okay.
so he decided he would take us for a hike in New Zealand, which sounded delightful. And it was delightful.
Ike.
Like there was parts of it you had to climb with your hands and and that was a bit where it all went pear-shaped because I stopped being able to use one of my legs correctly. And I had to literally physically lift my leg up into like a foothold and then push off it until we got above the snow line. And then on the way down, things got so bad that yes, Amy and it was Amy and Kim, so Jason's partner Kim, who's also quite diminutive, and you two had to carry my stuff up the mountain.
Look,
Yeah, and yet you still came on my podcast, which is kind of obviously um,
well,
either sympathy or
I just think, I mean, wasn't it the classic example of woman, like actually just helping get shit done, like,
yeah. No, I do remember. Do you remember when we were in the little Makarora in the little cabins before we left? And and Pat insisted on everyone unpacking all their bags to see what they had in them, so we didn't want to carry any extra weight. And what was in your bag, Amy?
um, well, I had, 3 different night creams. Can I just say, like, even before we got up the mountain, that was extremely powerful exercise for me because what it demonstrated was how much shit I was literally carrying around, not just in my pack, and we were going to be away, was it 4 nights, 5 nights?
Yeah.
And, but like emotionally, the package I was carrying, like, we hadn't even got up the mountain yet. I'm like, embarrassingly, something I learnt on that trip, which maybe if I'd believed my first husband might not have been such a revelation to me. But apparently I snore. And so the whole idea, like I'm a wee bit of a loud person anyway and quite excitable, but the fact that I'm loud at night, right, as well. And yeah, I didn't know that. So there you go. Amazing.
Well, this is perfect because, yes, I mean, the fact that you've said that you're a loud person makes it easier.
Well, everyone was looking for the guy who was keeping all the huts awake every night. And then finally, when people realized it was me, people were a bit salty in the mornings. Like, not you guys, you were lovely and mostly and love and kind about it. But everyone else, all the other trampers in the huts were a bit like growly because they didn't get any sleep. But I had wonderful sleep.
I also can't imagine that. I think if you're going to choose to go hiking and sleep in a hut without walls with 20 other people, you can't be entirely surprised that there is a snorer amongst you. I mean, it might have been surprising that it was you.
Well, I think apparently the combination of foghorn, train, rhinoceros, like, and then like I'm not a big person, so I think that was the surprise. But yeah, never underestimate the little one.
Yeah. Yeah, you definitely do sound much bigger than you are. I think that's definitely true.
Oh
Which
my lord!
also makes your choice of topic for today also super interesting.
Righto.
So obviously we spoke a couple of weeks ago
We did.
and I invited you on and I said, hey, Amy, you can talk about the future of absolutely anything you want. And you have chosen the future of silence.
The irony,
I know
right?
the irony. I was like, oh, is this a space that you've been exploring for a while or is this a new interest for you? Like,
Well, can I just say, certainly not consciously, that's for sure. So, yeah, interesting.
tell us why. Now, what was that? You know, when I said that to you, and I said like, this is a space that you could explore. Why choose this? What was going on for you, or has been going on, or what have been your thought
Yeah.
processes around this that made you want to explore this in more depth?
Yeah. So I think what it is I think I've been feeling so everything's loud and there's stimulation and we're on and this drive for to be connected, whether it's virtually in person and when you said what could I talk about, my mind flipped back to a 10-day Vipassana retreat I did, which was I don't know 10 years ago or so, and I loved it. I mean, admittedly, I slept through most of it. But the point was, as I got up at 4 a.m., oh my, actually, I just realized probably a lot of those participants heard me snoring.
They're
Probably.
like, damn it, this was meant to be a silent retreat.
To be honest, I did have the lovely helpers come and like wake me up because I was snoring during the day. But like getting up at 4 a.m. and then sitting and meditating for how many hours, it was pretty a big deal. But yeah, and I loved it. And what happened is stuff surfaced in my mind that I hadn't even realized I'd held on to or thought about. And that was fascinating. And then I remember after it finished, when I went to the airport, everything was so loud and so big, and I sensed that even my life in 10 years is more loud and more busy, and I'm trying to fit everything in. Um, Even in 10 years, I think I'm trying to do that more. And I don't know that I was conscious of that until you said, oh, and then, yeah,
Yeah, this is interesting because in some ways, I don't mean this in a bad way, you have built your practice and your business on being loud.
absolutely. Yeah.
And
And
I don't
encouraging people to talk and
yeah, like
connect.
yeah, like you stand at the front of a room and you are intentionally loud and
Yes.
vivacious and big.
Yes,
And part of that is about giving other people the confidence for them to be big and to be open and to talk and connect, right? So
absolutely.
so it's very interesting that I can understand that as you've grown into that role and got better at it,
Yes,
you're actually in some ways, yeah, are you somehow squeezing that space
I think so.
for silence and
Yeah. Or even the whole thing around by being like chasing connection external, perhaps I've lost connection internally. And
mm,
then that's brought up a bit of, oh, what does that mean for me?
yeah. And I think also the challenge, and I don't want to go into the conversation too much because we have your scenario to
Oh, yeah,
hear, and I think a lot of the stuff is kind of covered off in there. But it did bring up for me as well of this need for how do we maintain attention in an attention economy when everyone's shouting louder and louder.
Mm,
And, when we talk about this from a systemic perspective, it's like, do we get to a point where there is just a cacophony of noise?
mm,
Or is there somehow going to be a competing force that brings this back into a state of equilibrium? And I think that that's a little bit of what you explore in this, which was super
mm,
exciting.
mm. Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's interesting because when we first chatted, the first thing that comes to my mind was, well, this, 10-day retreat, is this going to become more normalized, not just for the people seeking spirituality? Is this going to be necessary for our health, actually? And is this going to be necessary for public health, like seeking out the silence? And so rather than just a weekend or 10 days, could these retreats become a month or 3 months and quite normalized? I'm
okay.
wondering.
So that was the starting point of our conversation. What I'm going to do now, Amy, is I'm going to throw to you. You're going to have free reign of the microphone. You're going to read your scenario from the beginning through the, gosh, I didn't notice your water bottle matches your wall. How cool is that?
Look, I tell you,
Does the wall match the water bottle or the other way around? Which one did you get first?
I got the wall first.
And then you had to find a water bottle to match it.
Yeah, and it had to be Frank Green because I was being a bit of a wanker, and I wanted a nice. Oh, am I allowed to swear? Sorry.
I did tell you we don't edit anything out. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
actually, yeah, I like nice things. So actually, I'm not
Yeah.
going to apologise for that. I like nice things, and I'll
Yeah.
probably.
I mean, it probably would have been more appropriate to get maybe Bernard Orange rather than Frank Green, but
Yeah, good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But anyway, I love you. You're so good. So, are you ready?
all right.
Is
Are you ready?
everybody
The
ready?
microphone's all yours. Let's
Okay.
hear about.
I'm
Oh, wait,
reading
one more
my
thing. Sorry, I forgot one
my
thing.
scenario.
When is this set? What year are we in with this?
Oh, 2045. So in
2045.
20 years time.
20 years time. Okay, cool. All right, that's it. No more
You ready?
questions. Over to you, Amy. Tell
Okay.
us about the future of
Oh.
silence.
Silence and noise. The future we're choosing. So Layla wakes to the soft hum of Mira, the sound so familiar it almost blends with her breath. Another morning, another day of perfectly drafted responses waiting before she has even opened her eyes. Mira has already summarised the chatter, preempted the tricky questions, and crafted flawless replies. Overnight, it's filtered her social layers too, deciding which holographic conversations are worth her time and which to mute entirely. It is efficient, seamless, and safe. This afternoon, she has a human-only meeting with someone who refuses to use proxies. So no Mira in the room. No silent stream feeding her lines. The client has already asked for a human-only conversation after a proxy mix-up last month. The thought prickles behind her ribs. No buffer, no polish, just her. Across the city, Matteo steps out into the morning rush. His walking commute is an obstacle course of stimulation. Holographic ads flare and dissolve in his path. Delivery drones weave overhead. Around him, social layers hum in the air, glowing status bubbles, half-transparent avatars, and spatial conversations stitched into the streetscape. Different groups inhabit different groups inhabit overlapping realities. Some are laughing at a protest, others see a food festival, and a few walk through blank silence by choice. Street musicians clash with an AI DJ, the rhythms briefly joyful before tipping into a low buzz under his skin. Outside, a pay-per-minute quiet pod. A queue curls down the street. Calm by subscription. Another day fighting for silence in a city that worships noise. As he walks, he thinks about how connection in 2045 is louder and more intentional than ever, but disconnection flows quietly beside it. Forms sell attention, wellness markets sell relief. The ledger balances either way. By now, the streams have not slowed. People have simply learned to breathe underwater. Some glide with ease and others are still drowning. A teenager slips off her overlays to read a real book as she walks. An elder dictates notes into an old but faithful proxy. Two futures side by side. Matteo rehearses his opening line under his breath. Here's to the silence that steadies us and the noise that reminds us we belong. He wants the room to feel it, not just hear it. He reaches the council chamber, sweat cooling on his neck. Today, he will argue for mandatory silence protocols in public decision-making. Structured pauses. Moments where everyone stops, breathes, and listens. Some call it visionary. Others call it elitist. It is a pilot, 90 seconds only, with opt-out cards on every desk and captions for those who process differently. Outside, the live stream is already buzzing. Without shared pauses, trust thins. Meetings get louder, decisions get worse. In Layla's office, a soft light pulses above the meeting table. 30 seconds of quiet before every meeting. Some colleagues close their eyes and settle. Others fidget, uncomfortable. Layla hovers somewhere in between. She remembers when the office buzzed constantly. This new ritual feels strange, but part of her craves it. Not everyone embraces these shifts. People's realities are shaped by habit, culture, inequities, and personal psychology. Older generations bring different rhythms and values. In some cultures, silence holds deep spiritual weight. In others, lively noise is how belonging is felt. Some lean so heavily on proxies that their conversations are efficient but brittle. Others retreat into algorithmic bubbles. And in rural and less connected regions, different patterns of connection and quiet continue altogether. Layla stands outside the meeting room. A news feed plays silently on the wall, showing snippets of Matteo's council debate. She glances at the caption, Silence Protocol Vote. Mira's interface blinks softly on her wrist, waiting to be activated. She hesitates, then switches it off. She hears Matteo's line in her head, Let the quiet gather you. The door slides open. The air inside is different without the digital hum. She takes a slow breath, turning inward before the conversation begins. In the hush, she reconnects with her own thoughts, not the filtered feed from Myra. Across town, Matteo steps up to the microphone. The room stills as the silence protocol begins. For a heartbeat, city's static fades. For many, this is everyday life in 2045. Created or raw, silent or overstimulated, local or virtual. In a world that demands constant interaction, connecting inward has become just as vital as connecting outward. What happens when silence becomes something only a few can afford? Layla lifts her head, voice steady, no buffer, no proxy, just her. The sound feels strange and thrilling all at once. Outside, a drone passes, and inside, the room holds. And that's it. How about that for a scenario? Amazing.
It's fantastic.
There's so
That's
much.
what it is. Yeah. I
What did
I
you
always
notice? Oh,
I just always feel I know, not surprised is a bit the wrong word, like, but when you give this task to people to go away and explore the future and come up with a scenario that captures the essence of an idea, I never know exactly what I'm going to get back. And I feel like receiving this is almost like a bit of a gift for me, where I can sense or have a sense of the effort and the time and the energy that went into crafting this. and how it somehow captures both an idea, but also captures a little bit of who you are, Amy.
Well, I thank you so carefully provided me with a thread that led into my soul, actually. Like it's a little thread that, you helped me provide a safe space to create this thread. And then I was invited to pull it. And I was so surprised at what where this took me. I was so captivated once I started exploring this, right? And the trends are that the silent retreats and things are on the rise, and there is a need from a health perspective. So, putting that aside, though, like just actually the fact you do a scenario and you're in it, I think that's what made it rich. Like, you didn't, yeah. Here I am, a communication, a communication expert, and I've got no words.
So this is one of the things that I picked up on this when I read it and was kind of thinking about the conversation that we were about to have
Mm,
is that neither of us are great at silence.
mm,
Again, I'm pretty good with words
mm.
and I tend to use them a lot and fill silences with them.
Especially when I'm
And
nervous, that's what I do.
yeah,
I tend to overperform to put other people at ease, to
yeah,
discomfort of maybe them just discovering my feelings, perhaps.
yeah. And we maybe also think it's about their discomfort when it potentially is ours as
Oh,
well.
100%.
And I did wonder, like, so I want to call it now just
Go
because
for it.
I
Yeah.
get a sense that on one hand, I really want to embrace this and try and find opportunities for more pause and silence in our conversation. And I also know we may do a really poor job of that.
Probably true.
It reminds me, one of our, another person who was in Thought Leaders at the same time was Oscar Trimboli.
Yeah, yeah.
And Oscar wrote a book about, deep listening or
Mm,
how to listen. And there's certainly parts of this that came up about how we view pauses. And you touch on that a little bit in terms of how silence means different things in different cultures.
mm,
But also, a pause can be my deep consideration of your point.
mm.
It could be an invitation for you to say something as well, as opposed to feeling it's something that must be filled immediately to avoid a sense of discomfort or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's have a crack, even though,
Well, I love that neither of us know where this is going to go.
yeah.
Slightly excited, slightly terrified too.
Can I start
Yeah.
by the experience of writing this? So I'm conscious that, when I ask you to do this, you don't have a background in futures thinking or strategic foresight. And I gave you a little bit some prompts, like a document that I shared to kind of get you started.
Mm,
But I'm very curious as to what that process was like for you. Were there a couple, I mean, you mentioned before about your own experience of going on a silent retreat.
mm.
Outside of that, though, were there signals and things that you picked up that really intrigued you and influenced this? What was that? Talk us through just broadly about what the process was like for you to create this.
Yeah. Okay. So, I had no idea what I was doing. So when I I got looked at the example scenario and then went through the prompts. Um, it was a beautiful, messy process for me because I just couldn't stick to the prompts. Because what happened is things come up and then I'd be like, oh, let's go deeper in that. Oh, let's go deeper over here. Oh my God, what does that mean down here? And so then I'd be like, oh no, I've got to come back to bring the scenario together. And so the lovely thing about that, I guess, is it just uncovered some just deeper thinking for myself and reflection. I really enjoyed it. And I'm really grateful because there's a part of me that's been avoiding that. And I'm not sure why, and maybe I don't need to know why. But this was fun this got me really questioning stuff I'm doing now. Like, where am I building in silence? Or, there's just so much, Simon. Amazing, right?
Yeah. And one of the things you'll find is that almost now that you've tuned your antennas towards this
Mm,
concept,
mm,
that even going forward beyond the exercise of the writing the scenario or preparing for the podcast,
yeah.
is that you will be more attuned to signals and ideas related to this core concept that you're interested in.
Yeah. Well, the thing that came up, and I can't believe I'd never heard of her before, but there was Sherry Turkle had done a TED talk and back in like 2012. So this was 13 years ago. And she had this quote and it blew my mind. And it was like, we expect more from technology and less from each other. That was 13 years ago.
Mm.
And so what that's kind of got me thinking about, well, have I personally, have I expected more from technology and less from myself? Like, I wonder if I've unconsciously outsourced a few things that because I was busy.
Mm. And I
And
do, on one hand, that could be an oversimplification in the
yes,
sense that you may expect less of yourself in some areas of your life.
yes, yes,
But the question would be is that if, by outsourcing some of our work or our responsibilities to technology, what did we do with the time that we gained? And I
yeah,
think that's probably the slightly
yes,
more depressing part of it is we kind of like, did I do something meaningful with that? Was I spending that time? Yeah. Yeah.
right. And and there's a real shame associated with that, and there's a real addiction, but yet I'm doing something. I'm
Yeah.
not really. Like I think there's a tension around that I need to dive into a bit more myself.
Yeah. And it's one of the
Personally,
ideas
like, God.
what I see in this scenario is you capture really beautifully this increasing overwhelm of information and communication, which I'll jump into in a sec. But before we do so, the last part of this process that I shared with you was because you gave me a draft of this a couple of days ago. Let's be honest, it was yesterday. Um,
Oh, well,
yeah.
and can we just acknowledge, like, I've not done something like this before, and I love you so much. You might not feel it all the time because, you hear from me every 7 years. But, that's friendship in my mind, it's quality, Simon, not quantity. Anyway, and so there's an element of me not wanting to let you down. And so what this process brought up for me, which is very telling really about for me what's going on, is like this, oh my God, is this going to be good enough? I don't want to let Simon down. And that was fascinating. I was like, wow, I made it mean so much, even into our friendship.
Yeah.
And I
The
was
thing
like,
you said to me this morning when we first jumped on, because I was a little bit late in terms of sending through the link for Riverside to do the recording. And like the self-talk for you was, gosh, well, maybe I just haven't done a good enough job. But I want to let Simon know that I'm just really grateful anyway because the exercise has been really validating. And I was like, oh, no, this is amazing. No, but that
not,
aside,
well, not even, my friend, not even validating. Like, the exercise has been incredibly powerful. Like, I'm now going, well, so what other exercise, like, I could really implement just this exercise into my world to consider different, well, obviously future's your space, but in terms of, well, what does all this mean? And what are we doing now that's going to add or detract from said future, potential
mm,
future? Mm.
that's one question though, because I
Yes,
did say
ma'am.
when I got the draft of this, I said, look, it's a little bit long. And that, no. It's often the case
Yes. Yeah.
because it's really hard to filter ourselves when we think all of this is important.
Yeah, good point.
And the feedback I kind of, and this is pretty consistent with guests on the show when I get their drafts, is like it needs to be a little bit shorter for two reasons. One is we only have an hour and a bit or so to explore this with, and if it was 3 pages long, there's going to be so much content in there, we're not going to do it justice.
Yeah.
The second challenge is that I want you to know and want you to work out what really matters to you in this space around kind of noise and silence. what are the core concepts that you will definitely not take out, but also what is removable? Can
Mm,
you share, like, in that, like, when you look at this scenario that you have finished,
mm.
what are the core things that are so important to you in this?
I think Layla using Mira, her proxy, and how being required by a client to going into a meeting without a proxy, and how the angst she had around being just her. And
So we become almost like so reliant. We have this almost as a crutch for us.
yeah, yeah,
And why did that resonate with you so much? Is that something that you see? At this point, I kind of get a sense that Mira might be some type of brain computer interface,
yeah,
eh,
yeah. That's what I
because
was thinking.
you
Yeah,
make the line here that where were we up? Oh, there's no there's a silent stream feeding her lines. So this
yeah.
is something that is silent. So it's basically a direct interface. Obviously, there is some emerging technology like that starting to come out where we can actually have these kind of direct brain computer interfaces, but it's not commonplace at the moment. What are the versions of this which you see playing out either in your own life or in others around you? Why is this concept of proxies so important to you?
Well, I guess I have an uncomfortableness around things like ChatGPT in terms of things sounding the same, or people like like, and this was the irony or the tension for me, is you gave me these amazing prompts that helped me create this amazing scenario, but it was in how do we use this technology not for good. That sounds too. So there's for me there's a tension between the using the technology and then the not using, and if by using it does it become more, are we basically stopping our own thinking, I guess.
Mm,
And so that when so let's say someone uses it a lot for their LinkedIn posts, a lot of people do, fine. But like then when there's an opportunity to sit and not have access to it, what do we actually create? Or what is there?
yeah, and you say it's fine, and
Yeah.
again, I feel a little tension around this.
I don't know if I have an answer. So I think
Yeah,
I love
that's
that
okay.
you ask bloody good questions. So and it's nice, I guess, for me not to be curated. Ah, yeah, wow, and performing. Yeah, this is great. Carry on. Sorry. Yeah.
So I had the same dilemma, like when um, for people listening, there's a document I share with everybody who comes on the show. And it basically says, so you've been invited on the Future with Friends, so you need to write a scenario. And it's basically for people who are non-futurist types to kind of give them a very high level process that allows them to kind of create a scenario, share an example, and then I give some cognitive prompts. So here's how you could think through this. And then I've shared some generative AI type prompts that match it. And when I first pulled that together, I was like, had um, questions about it because I was like, oh, is that really what I want people to do? And I was like, well, I can't rely on people feeling super comfortable with just the cognitive prompts because it's
Mm,
quite a taxing exercise to go through. So I'll do this. And then when I've given it to them, I basically say to everybody, try and use them sparingly.
yeah.
The risk of it is exactly what you said. Ends up sounding very same.
Mm,
And
mm,
also it risks taking away agency from you
mm,
in terms of, I want you to choose what really matters to you. I want you to choose and make decisions about what you think the risks and the concerns are, but also the hopes and dreams are, right?
yeah.
So I feel that tension just as you feel that tension. Can I ask you openly though,
Please.
like,
Yeah.
what was the mixture for you? If you were to go, like, I know you use some of the prompts at different points. How did you find that balance of ultimately for yourself?
Well, it's interesting because I had the tension of, oh, this is what it's created. So do I just send that? Right. And then it could have been done and dusted in 20 minutes. But then I was like, oh no, I'm sorry. What it did is I got curious. And so then I wanted to play. So that surprised me. I didn't expect the process of using ChatGPT to actually then trigger some joy and creativity and curiosity in myself, so that I'd go, oh, well, that's interesting. Well, I'm interested. Well, what is the current state on that? Like, what is happening with healthcare and like around connection and loneliness? And so there was a whole many rabbit holes that I went down. So what I kind of thought I'd need a couple of hours for probably took me more like 5. And it was
Yeah.
the reflection and the bouncing and then okay, so what would that mean for our schools? Or what does that mean so for corporation, like in terms of the proxy thing, like how do we know that what's the ethics around human and non-human work, which is what we're starting to play with or be aware of more now.
And now a word from our future sponsors.
In a world that never stops, sometimes we all need to. But who has time for a 10-day silent retreat in the mountains? Not you. Who would look after your cat? Who would look after your indoor plants? Introducing Retreatify. All the calm, none of the hassle. Our micro retreats are designed for humans who can't even schedule lunch. Using our patented micro retreat platform, you can undertake a 10-day silent retreat, 10 minutes at a time. No monks, no incense, no judgment. Take 10 minutes between back-to-back calls. 10 minutes while your toast is browning. 10 minutes of actual peace, delivered straight to you. Because sometimes 10 minutes might not be all you need, but it might be all you can get. Retreatify. 10 days of silence. 10 minutes at a time. Minimalist. Affordable. Achievable.
This has come up a couple of times in the podcast. The book by called 4,000 Weeks.
Oh,
And
who's that? I can't remember, but yeah, carry on.
part of it, though, is the conclusion that if we really want to understand the concept of productivity, it's really about, to me, it boils down to this idea of we are what we give our time to. The risk, I think, of how this is set up when I share the process with people is we have an output, we have a measure of success, which is create a scenario. And so failure is I didn't create a scenario. Success is I created a scenario. Whereas that's actually not really what failure and success is. Success is actually the deep exploration of a topic so I have a better understanding of it and prepare myself for alternate futures that could emerge, right? Or something like that.
Which I found delightful, right?
Yeah,
but in this morning when I said, look, if it's not good enough and we don't go ahead, thank you for this gift of providing me with this experience. Anyway, like in fact, you've deeply, profoundly and positively impacted my life just through this opportunity.
So the setup should probably be then, because the Campbell's law, I think, which says that as soon as you choose to put a quantitative measure on something, you create the conditions for that measure to be bastardized and misused effectively. So it fails to be useful as soon as you choose to use it.
Right. Yeah.
So if the measure is scenario, not scenario, it actually entices people to use ChatGPT to just create the scenario because I ticked the box that said I did my homework effectively.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was to say, hey, look, ultimately it doesn't matter whether you come up with a scenario or not. But then it's like, oh, but then we don't actually get a show. It's like, anyway, let's jump into this a bit more because I really love this. There's so many beautiful stuff. I think that definitely I picked up on that as well. How do we feel comfortable without that level of social support? But what really comes through in the first half of this is this growing noisiness that we're dealing with. This idea that everyone's getting louder and louder to try and compete with each other. And I actually thought you captured this beautifully. And you can see how we could extrapolate from the present into a future where the level of noise is just a messiness of different noises over the top of each other. And people are being sent different signals in the world, but they all overlap. When you think about that and when you wrote that, What's your own personal response to that kind of a future?
Yeah, well, it was excitement and horror. Like, the noise is enticing, I think, and distracting. Oh, that's interesting. Which can then um, seductively take us away from our own feelings. Oh, perhaps you should be charging me for this. Shit. Oh, yeah. It's
Kind of is
kind of,
like the
it's kind of a,
contemplation as a service.
wow. I'm like, it's kind of the safe numbing, safe by avoiding feelings. Um, by letting myself be drawn into the noise and distraction.
I think there is something here whereby we become, as we deal with less silence, we become less comfortable with the silence.
Mm,
If we haven't spent some time doing the inner work, and I fully claim and own up to the fact that I haven't done a lot of that inner work. But
mm,
if we haven't done a little bit, then it becomes really hard to do more of it. So
yeah.
you kind of almost have this catch 22 is like, oh no, I do want the noise because I want the distraction
Mm,
because I don't know how to deal with that stuff.
yeah. And it's
So,
not necessarily a conscious chasing of the noise that occurs.
it's even like the busyness stuff. Like I find, and I've talked about
Mm.
this with my wife Gnomes a number of times, is
I love
that
Gnome.
off.
Make sure you give her a cuddle from me. Oh,
I will. She said say hi, by the way. I
oh, thank you.
told her that I was catching up with you today. She's like, oh,
Oh,
say hello to Amy for me.
oh, she's just sunshine. Love her. Yep.
But she was saying, like, we've had this conversation a number of times around the concept of busyness in our personal lives and how we feel almost compelled to go from the busyness of work to the busyness of home to the business of chores on weekends. And we almost feel a level of guilt around relaxing and personal time and me time. And, we've talked about this need to give each other permission so that almost in doing so, we give ourselves permission.
Mm,
Because if I've given her permission to say, hey, look, of course you deserve 2 hours or 3 hours and a half a day on a weekend to do whatever the hell you want to do.
mm,
And if she says that and I say that, we're also saying about ourselves, not just each other. But it's almost harder to give ourselves permission. It's easier to give someone else permission. I think almost in this, it's almost like, of course you deserve silence and time for calm and time for reflection. And perhaps that means is so do I.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. 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 You see, I remember thinking like, because I'm quite all or nothing in my thinking. And what's it called? Full on or fuck all. And so I guess when I did the retreat, I loved the freedom from not having to talk to people because there was you couldn't. So no eye contact and no sound, no talking for 10 days. And so I loved that permission not to engage. Love that. I found that
Mm.
so liberating. I didn't realize how wired I was to engage with everyone or have to. And
Yeah.
right. And then the other thing though is I remember thinking, oh yeah, 10 days, cool. I could go and live in an ashram for 3 months, no problem. I could, whatever, cool. But how do we bring it back into everyday life? Like, how do I bring those little bits of silence or that? Is it?
One of the lines you used here, which really resonated with me about the concept of silence being elitist,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I found super interesting. And I kind of partly picked it up from conversations like, say, doing a 10-day silent retreat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some people would look at that and go, well, that's great for some, but there's no way I could afford And when I say afford, maybe both
Time,
financially and
financially,
time, I can't
travel.
afford just to go and do nothing for 10 days. And there is an elitist aspect of it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Very privileged, very entitled.
mm,
Exactly. And so then, and I guess then that caused me to consider then does the silence become a premium like fresh water, like fresh air? So we're thinking in 20 years' time, like what's our world going to look like? And if our health demands us to have some silence, is everyone going to have access to that? And which is why Matteo was looking at, you know, putting in a thing where we have to do, what was that? It was a silent, actually having to, what was it? Mandatory silent protocols and decision
mm.
making.
I'll come to that back in a sec because there's some stuff in there that, again, I think is super interesting in this scenario. But the concept of privilege when it comes to silence, and, you touched on this idea of there's a line around the block for the pod, that you can go into and have a moment of calm, and this concept of calm as a service. This really kind of spoke to me. I love the kind of subtle absurdity of it
Yeah.
that you can also see as emerging out of the current situation. And I picked up as like, when you have, you've obviously spent your share of time on doing business travel,
Mm.
and you see the professional travelers,
Yeah.
and they walk around with their noise canceling headphones on, and they have their like protocols that they put in place so that they can block out the noise and the stuff going on around them.
Mhm.
And in this world that you describe, I thought about how, again, noise canceling devices would be almost like par for the course.
Yeah.
And the noise is really directed at the people who can't afford such devices. But
Absolutely.
also, if you could have a noise canceling headphones, could you also have vision canceling glasses? That you wear glasses and lenses that block out billboards and replace them with a natural scene that might have sit behind that. That you actually have the ability, just like noise canceling headphones work by creating and like the negative wave of the sound wave. You could
Mm.
create the negative wave of the light wave, and you could,
Absolutely.
right? But then also,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you also have smell canceling masks? That you could actually create a bubble for yourself
So then it
in
wouldn't
this.
matter if we had if we ruined the environment, because it doesn't matter if it smells bad.
Well, so first of all, there's two things
So
that come up. One
then we
is our
start to
care,
correct.
yeah. Our care
Sorry.
becomes less because that's other people's problem. I'm not dealing with it.
Oof.
Yeah. And the second
Wow.
part of it is, though, is just as, noise canceling technology will get better and better, is that you can still hear the low hum, right? It's
Mm.
never silence. It is a hum. There's almost a pervasive hum, whether it be an audible one or a vision hum or something that stops us being in silence. And I kind of found that a really interesting, that we almost like replace. And this is the other thing, that because silence is not silence.
Mm. That's right.
Silence is still the sound of, the wind in the trees and the birds singing and the water in the creek. It's all those sounds are the natural sounds of silence. And if we were to cancel them all, we lose our connection with the natural environment as well. So there's
Mm.
something in there
Mm.
as that I kind of almost came up with, like, what this kind of objective of silence may take away things that are actually really important for our mental health.
Yeah, like imagine then, I love this, because then you think about even now, like the salt pods, the floating tanks. And then
Yeah.
you get to curate what music or what sounds or just nothing. And so then, wow. So then do you then get a prescription for what you need to listen to in the float tank?
When,
Because you haven't had enough nature sounds. Do you know,
yeah.
like I'm like, oh, like, wow. Because,
But even then, it's like we're not getting nature sounds. We're
no,
getting pretend nature sounds.
right, right.
So when
Oh,
our Mike came on the podcast and he talked about the future of the past, and he shared this story of him going up on country with some Indigenous elders out inside in I think the Pilbara region, maybe the Kimberley, sorry, just inland from Broome.
Yeah.
And he shared this story about the last night they were out on country, and he's there with a bunch of musos because there was a support, like a benefit gig that was happening in Broome, and they're by the fire, and one of the musos gets out the guitar and starts playing, and was like, oh, this is pretty cool, like a private little gig. And then he plays another song, and then a third song, and a fourth song, and then he kind of looked around, and most of the mob had kind of moved to another spot and started another fire
Interesting.
because all the music, as much as it was nice, meant they couldn't hear the ancestors and the spirits.
Wow.
And in their context, I would suggest, and again, I'm not an area of expertise, it's not the fact that those ancestors and those spirits make noise, it's they make particular noises at particular times that mean something. And so having a recording of natural sounds in a in a sensory deprivation tank is meaningless because it
Sympathetic.
has no connection to a place and to a time. It's just a recording of something. And this feels really important
Yeah.
in a way that we are creating artificial versions of things that are actually really meaningful and pretending that the artificial version of it is the same thing,
Yeah.
whether that be, relationships mediated through technology, and what would it mean to connect without our mirrors, whether
Yeah.
it be, even this as a podcast recording and us going, oh, but we caught up, and how different it was from when we had dinner together
Yeah.
a couple of months back, which was so
Yeah,
beautiful.
that was. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
But also so many different versions of this where we have something that was really important for our mental health and well-being
Mhm.
that sometimes we create a facsimile of it and go, that'll do.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Yeah. And will our children, uh, like, I hope all children know the difference. I hope that everyone gets to experience, again, speaking from a really bloody privileged perspective, right?
But even, when you said that about our children, it reminded me even the conversations I've had about food and where does food come from,
Mm.
and particular meat comes from. So my oldest daughter, Mia, she's a vegetarian. She had a realization, when she was probably 8 years old that meat, what is a dead animal.
Mm.
And she felt super uncomfortable and didn't like the idea that animal had to die for her to eat. And so since the age of 8, she has been a vegetarian, never wavered, because it's not about the flavor or the texture, it's about the concept of it.
Yeah, wow.
I grew up, my dad was a professional fisherman, so I have grown up with witnessing animals being killed for
Mhm.
food.
Mm.
And as long as it's done in a humane way, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I do believe
Unless it's just for enjoyment, right? And then I have that again tension, because someone would say, "Well, what difference does it make? The animal's still going to lose its life."
Mm,
Mm.
yeah, and
Especially
then
growing up in a farming
yeah,
community, or where you think about Dr. John DeMartini. He's an interesting rooster. Anyway, but he would say the animals are only here because we need food. They wouldn't be here unless we needed them, which is
is in
yeah.
terms of farmed animals.
Yes,
So
that's right. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and there's some interesting aspects of that. Is what is the quality of life that animal got before it sacrificed its life for us? There's some very interesting
Yes. Yeah.
possessives.
Yeah.
My view is always, though, is like, well, if you want to eat it, you need to acknowledge where it came from.
Yes.
And the idea of believing that, lamb comes in a styrofoam container in the supermarket, as opposed to it was once an animal, that's why I push back on it.
Yeah.
But again, there's certain aspects of this which are tied to, one, a sense of privilege,
Mm.
that you have a supermarket that you go to where someone has pre-butchered the animal for you
Mm.
and only giving you the best bits in a
Mm.
package. Like
Yeah.
how elitist that is. So this
Yeah.
is super
Mm.
interesting that I think in Western culture, potentially,
Yes.
we are becoming more divorced or separated from some of the natural systems that we're deeply reliant on for our very survival.
Yeah. And as I was going through this process. Like, it wasn't just silent retreats, it was things around, nature, just getting back in nature and how important that was. But then that raised the thing around, well, in 20 years' time, what is hopefully our world is, and we still got access to lots of nature. And what are we doing to ensure that for 20 years' time?
Mm. So yeah, this go back to that concept of what Matteo is putting forward here. So Matteo is putting forward this idea that this level of silence, it should be required, it should be mandated. And on one hand, I get it. I understand where Matteo is coming from. I believe there's a lie already in organizations that the idea of silence and pausing before meetings. I've actually worked in an organization where it was a requirement that everyone had to pause for 60
Right.
seconds at the start of a meeting. And how it fights against our inherent belief that that's inefficient. We just don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Though I actually agree with Matteo's premise here, is that taking time for that pause ultimately will give us a little bit more space to think.
Mm.
It will give us the opportunity to leave whatever baggage we came into the room with and enter into a space of decision making, which is ultimately more effective. We
And
trade efficiency for effectiveness.
and hopefully more intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
This is a dilemma
yeah.
that plays out in organizations everywhere because efficiency is immediate and obvious.
Oh, it's easy to measure, right?
Correct.
This head
Yeah.
stuff, all of these, they're easy to measure and research, and
And we talk about the effectiveness of an intentional decision and a better decision. And first of all, we don't even know what the alternative decision was that we're comparing against.
absolutely.
And then second of all, the implications of that decision may not play out immediately. They may play out over, when I work with local government, it's often decades. So how long do you need to wait to work out whether or not that investment of 60 seconds at the beginning of the meeting was actually a good one? So I think there's that stuff that goes on. But the other part of this as well, which really struck me about the concept of a mandate.
Oh, yeah.
So again, we obviously have lived through a pandemic where in both our countries, masks were mandated. And when we mandate things, the experience isn't always a good one. Some people very much dislike the concept of something being mandated on them. But in fact, I would say most people hate being told what to do.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And so for some of the population, they would take the time to come to the conclusion that such a decision was a good one, in which case the mandate is not even required because they perhaps would have done it anyway. For others, the idea that was mandated would mean, well, I'm definitely not going to be doing that now. Tell you that
100%.
right now.
100%.
I find that a very interesting. In some ways, the concept of the mandate is in itself an act of efficiency.
Yeah.
Right? The quickest way to get to this outcome that we all need is we're going to force it to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have time to wait for people to come to this conclusion for themselves, Amy. Seriously, we're on a timeline here.
We're on a timeline. People are dying,
Yeah.
Simon.
Yeah. So apply that
Ooh.
to this concept of the silence is if we mandate silence, does it actually undermine the very premise of it in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. There's so, you're right. Yeah, there's so, it's a bit like, in New Zealand, a lot of organisations will have karakia, so a Māori prayer before meetings. And so, and if that helps people to be intentional in a room, I think that's amazing, right? But then the juxtaposition, though, is if that then rubs someone up the wrong way who doesn't want to do that, does that then have the opposite effect on them for the rest of the meeting?
So tell us about that.
Ooh.
Tell us about that ritual. How does it work?
So opening with a prayer. So an honouring of everyone that's in the room, and and the intention. And I'm no expert, right, in Māori culture. I live in New Zealand. I've got a lot to learn, love it. And the karakia for me personally, just helps me for me to be grounded in the room. And I really like it. I love it.
Mm.
Because I feel like it's an intentional practice. We're here, we're about to do something important or something that matters.
Yeah.
People who may struggle or do struggle are people who are more efficiency based and I don't want religion, or it's not, that's not how I receive it. So they'll go, I don't want that. Like, I don't, we've only got an hour together, Simon. So why would we spend even a minute on something that's not on the agenda, or not something we need to measure and chat about or whatever. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and how much of the time people spend that meeting waiting for their opportunity to have their say.
Yeah.
And any minute at the beginning that is wasted is a minute I might not get to have my say, which I wonder if that's more like, again, we're delving into a space around kind of psychology and stuff, which is not an area of expertise, but
No.
it won't stop me from having an opinion.
I love that.
But this idea of like honoring, like if I feel like I'm in that room and my presence there isn't valued or isn't honored, then I will feel compelled to say something or do something so that I'm recognized. If we could have had a space in the first place where everyone felt honored, and I think that it probably comes a little bit stems from the premise of what you're saying, is like, hey, just before we start, I just want to say, I want to honor everybody for being here. That just by taking the time to be here, that is important. Thank you. And if we were all honored now, then we don't feel a need to then have to be honored again at some point by saying something. I do wonder, I know, within Australia, there's a lot of pushback around things like welcome to country, which is not, I don't think it's not the same premise as what you're talking about. But it comes with similar baggage. It comes with First Nations baggage, which is people are pushing back on it, not because it's not a good idea. It's because it is representative of a group of people or a culture that is threatening to our own sense of identity. Like the one that comes up here around welcome to country is like, well, who are you to welcome me to my country? And it's like, I don't think that's really the intent.
Don't think that's
right?
what it's about, but yeah. But then I guess there's an assumption we're making around people being open or self-aware, or I guess the big assumption I'm making is that people want to connect. And maybe some people don't.
I believe we all need connection, but we may not feel a need for that connection with everybody.
Yeah.
We might feel that, I've got a very good friend of mine over in Perth who very proudly says, like, I can count my friends on one hand, that is my number of friends I've got. Obviously, he could never run a podcast called The Future with Friends because we'd do 5 episodes and that would be it.
Yeah. He'd need to find a better day job.
Yeah. But he might have a show though, that is like The Future with Acquaintances, because he would have lots of acquaintances and stuff in his work, but he would never kind of narrow them down to being friends. His belief around a need to have a deep sense of connection or any type of connection with those people outside of that handful is pretty low. And I think there's a bunch of people out there who like that. Goes like, I've got enough connection with that small group of people. I don't need it from others. They may even look at people like yourself and myself as being kind of needy. That we have this constant need for connection.
100%.
I wonder though if there's another perspective, which is this idea that we are all connected already, whether we like it or not. We are all connected. And we may not know the strengths or weaknesses of those connections or the reasons behind them, but we are all connected. And I believe also for people like yourself and myself, there is a curiosity
Mm,
around where that connection exists. And
yeah.
it may be a connection through people or ideas or places, but that exploration of connection is also a very powerful idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that curiosity. Yeah. I guess I love learning about others and cheerleading um, like I love seeing people bravely doing their work, whatever that is,
Can
like
I share with you before we
please. Yeah, please.
uh, move on? Because in a second, we have to start closing out, which
Oh,
feels,
really?
yeah, I know. Um,
Call yourself
feels
a
like it's come too
friend. Call
soon.
yourself a friend and
This idea that really one of my favorite lines in this was this idea that without shared pauses, trust thins.
Mm,
I love the concept of trust thinning
mm,
well, I don't like the idea of it. I love
mm,
the way that
mm,
it's been articulated
mm,
is that trust doesn't, we often frame things in binaries.
mm,
It's either I trust you or I don't trust you. I like the concept of it thinning is like the trust just becomes more fragile over time. What with that concept though about without shared pauses, trusting, was there was that something that you came up with? Was it something that 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 AI generated, or was it like what does it mean to you? Where does that stem from for you?
um, I feel like it was AI generated, right? But the sense for me was not just around pauses. I think it for me was more about without shared purpose or a sense of doing something for each other and ourselves. That's kind of what it felt like for me. It was like without just not jumping into, well, what's the point, but almost.
Mm,
So it's like, I guess for me, it's kind of like when people go, well, I don't have to connect with people, just jumping into day to day stuff. And I go, but you work with people, you sell to people. So why wouldn't you just tweak to get the best out of that moment? Why wouldn't you just do that for your health? Why wouldn't you? So I guess for me, the shared pause would be, I think it's the honoring. I think it's the honoring of the space of being here, being now, you being you, me being me. And without that, then are we just dictated to, or do we not really be present? My camera hasn't stuck, by the way. I'm just
oh no,
practicing.
no.
I'm practicing.
There's a couple of things that came up. That
No,
came up for
sorry, I jumped into my feelings. Did you see what I did then? I jumped into my feelings and I quickly made a joke because that's what I do when I'm feeling scared. Um,
yeah.
you
I
know,
did some work,
mm.
I don't know, it must be a couple of years ago now, with a shaman,
Oh,
um,
love this.
that Michael Dixon also works with and kind of put me on to. And Marty was based in the US, and we had a little peer group of around six of us or so that were on this journey together, where concepts around kind of pausing and connection were really, really important. She held really strong beliefs that we could connect with each other uh, as if we were in person over distance. So the fact that you and I are on a video call for this is all right. If we can sit in that shared space, almost like it was a connection at a physical level rather than at
Mm,
a mental level. And the premise being is that our thoughts and the words that come out of our mouth are based on the thoughts, which are an interpretation of our bodily feelings. is at the bodily feeling space that we have a deep sense of connection. When we
Mm.
kind of filter that through into words and talk, we actually have much more chance of disconnect happening as
Mm.
well. And I
Mm.
do think about that the present is problematic. And I mean that when we talk in the present, we have problems that we're trying to solve. You have a position and I have a position, and we're trying to mediate the position, but we start from that point of almost difference. So,
Mm.
what's your opinion on this, Amy? Here's my
Mm.
opinion on this. And can we
Mm.
resolve this opinion?
Mm.
In the silence, perhaps we find commonality and we find, as you said, you talked about kind of the concept of connection. And maybe if we start from that, it's like, oh, okay, cool. At least we've got all that. And although we may now have the thing around that involves words, we start from the premise of that connection. Do you use any of this in your dotting type work? Have you tried bringing pauses and silence into
No,
that?
no, but this is, again, this is revolutionizing how I'm thinking about those workshops. I can say that the different dots, like the different ways of dots is just a New Zealand made system, the different ways of processing information. I can see that the different dots will easily or lean into the pausing or resist it completely.
Yeah. I also
And
wonder though whether
yeah.
so one of the dilemmas I see with this is,
Mm.
as I said, I've worked in one organization where the CEO was the instigator and it was a small organization. So there weren't many meetings where that CEO wasn't present. And it was probably an organization that was a little bit new age-ish in a sense. There was a catalyst for the pauses to happen, and there was a general willingness to participate in it from the audience, right? And I feel about how hard that might be in general organizations where there isn't a strong catalyst, and the person who voices up and goes, "Hey, we should do a 30-second pause before we start." There'll be a bunch of people like, "What the?"
Mm. Mm.
In that environment, though, you have an amazing influence over quite large organizations sometimes in terms of the concept of communication and how they communicate. And I know your work is incredibly well received. And people go, "Oh my God, it's so insightful to suddenly understand a little bit more clearly."
Mm.
I wonder, though, whether or not someone like yourself suggesting that this is a really powerful protocol might actually give permission for people en masse to embrace an idea that they would not have entertained unless it was they heard it from you in that of my environment packaged up with all the other amazing work you do. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Mm.
you validate it through all your other work and they go, and if Amy says we pause, I mean, like, who am I to argue with Amy?
Oh, I feel very uncomfortable about having that power, and I'm pretty sure I don't. But I like to, I think it's gently challenge the way we do things and why we do them, and hopefully the challenging is encouraging people to be more open to different ways of considering things, and we were talking about 2045, right? And so if everything is really overstimulated and noisy and our health is taking a toll, which is trending as if it will, and then it becomes like a public health measure. So now it would be maybe gimmicky or good for some people, but perhaps in 20 years' time it won't. And so why wouldn't we play with the idea of doing some of these things now? What is
I
the
did.
real cost of 60 seconds
Yeah.
silence?
I did make a note here whether or not silence may become a human right, or there's calls for silence to become a human right.
Yeah.
And we see pollution in the biggest sense of the word as being not just pollution of a river or
100%.
we see
Yeah. So
pollution of
yeah, like the right to silence, the right to fresh water, the right to light, the right to clean air, fresh air, like yeah.
So this is all. I've loved this conversation. I've enjoyed the the pauses in it. And I know some people listening to this, Oscar, if Oscar was listening to this, he'd be like, there was no pauses. but I feel like we've done great, Amy.
Yeah. Like I know you and you know me and I know me mostly. Probably could do a bit more work on myself. But yeah, I believe we've done well.
I also mentioned that a lot of podcasts these days, which I think you were aghast at, was
Oh.
the idea that they will edit out the pauses because any moment that isn't filled with information is considered wasteful. Which in some ways is not dissimilar to, you mentioned here watching the news feed. And the news feed is, how do I take this hour-long press conference and condense it into a 30-second snippet of the most important points? We will, though, be leaving in this podcast all the pauses in there for people to relish in. What, apart from that, this idea, there's a strong premise here around, hey, could we bring pauses in? Outside of that, do you have any advice for our listeners as into small things that they could do to push their own world or their own life in a more positive direction? I mean, it feels like there's a strong stance you have here that we all need more space and more silence in our lives. I would tend to agree with you. We need to somehow push back against this avalanche of information and noise that has become almost the public realm.
Mm.
Do you have any advice for people? Are you doling out advice today?
No, I don't think I am because, I'm just mindful, like this is a journey for me. And so I've got so much to learn for myself. And I guess what this has caused me to really reflect on and spend some time unpicking or following that thread of my soul, which is lovely, is the intentionally connecting, but also the purposeful disconnecting. And when I flex into either, and so externally, but also internally, if that makes sense. So I don't know that I've been great at internally connecting with myself. And perhaps externally, I haven't been great. Oh, the irony. Externally, I haven't been great at deliberately disconnecting from what doesn't serve me.
So what advice might you give yourself then?
So my advice for myself,
if you want, and I want something like
Yeah.
practical, if possible, something that
Yeah,
you'd almost make a commitment to.
Yeah. So what I commit to doing is I commit to journaling and really digging into what does deliberate disconnection mean, which isn't just social media. There's more depth in that than just social media or toxic people. Or what does it mean for Amy Scott? And what does intentional connection to myself mean? And is one at the cost of the other? Or how does that, I don't know. What routines, what rituals? Actually, what comes to mind is I do need to actually create or commit to silence. So back when I did the Vipassana retreat, after that, even just 15 or 20 minutes of just silence each morning was really, ironically, you think you've got no time, but taking the time to have the silence.
I know this was a serious moment, but I just had this thought of like you having just to tell Dan beforehand, can you wake me up in 15 minutes?
Well, let's be honest. That's probably what's going to happen. I probably am going to fall asleep. But then why judge myself for it? Like I'm still trying, right? And then perhaps I'll get better at it.
Yeah.
And
100%.
if anyone hears me snoring, can you just wake me up? Make sure I'm not drooling because it's really attractive.
Yeah. And this has also come up a couple of times in various podcasts. And again, it partly inspired when I asked Mike the same question and he was like, spend more time in nature, just go sit under a tree.
Yeah.
I think that idea of finding spaces, I know this is probably really hard for people, especially living in inner city areas, but finding a place where you can, even if we can't be completely devoid of all noise pollution, but find a place where we are connecting even in a small way with the natural environment and natural sounds is probably super healthy.
Mm.
My last question is, and I know you've kind of alluded to different things along the way, and you've said wonderful things about the process.
Mm.
What is something that you will take away from this process or this conversation? So obviously it started a few weeks back when I kind of hit you up to be on the podcast. I'm really curious though about what has shifted for you in this.
You've stirred a deeper, well, no, not, it wasn't even there before, but you've created a deep curiosity for learning more about silence, which is I know I come up with silence initially, but I did not really consider the connection, disconnection, and how the world is morphing. I just hadn't really considered the impact and the impact it's having on me now.
One of the lines I use is that the future is a safe space to have difficult conversations.
Oh,
I
oh,
imagine
love that. Can I
for
use that?
you and for
I'll attribute it to you, of
yeah.
course.
But the concept of silence and disconnection in the present feels probably very confronting
Mm,
for us, and I think for a lot of people,
mm,
when we can talk about it as what might this be like 5 years or 10 years or 20 years from now, and we can see where the world takes us and how this need for silence grows in its importance.
mm,
Then the next part of that is, well, we can kind of backcast and go, well, if I needed to have a really healthy relationship with silence and disconnection in that world, what would I need to start doing now? What are those kind of pixie steps that I would need to take? So I do think that's really interesting. And again, this journey and this conversation has been really insightful for me too, because I do suffer from some of the same afflictions, Amy, that you do.
Really? Are you
Yeah.
human? Oh my goodness, Simon Waller. I had you on this big pedestal.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I
know.
love you. I love you. I love that. I love the authentic. I love that I can be me. Um, so good.
Well,
Yes.
you do
You're so, you're,
you
you're,
very well,
you're
I
so
think.
delicious. I love it.
Um, Amy, thank you so
Yes.
much for being on the show. It's been so lovely. Like this conversation has been beautiful. Um,
Okay.
and we've obviously over the time of our friendship, we've had a number of conversations at different times. But we also kind of had a little gap in between where we, haven't been as in contact with each other. I'd really loved catch up for dinner when you were in Melbourne, I suppose about a month or two back and doing
Mm.
this. And even if we don't have podcast recordings to do, we should catch up and chat more often.
Yeah, please. Yeah, definitely. You just enrich my life. It's so good for my soul. Thank you.
Well, on that note,
Ooh,
this is the end of
thank you,
episode 16
Simon.
of The Future with Friends. Thank you so much, Amy.
Hey,
It was
thank
wonderful to
you.
have you with us. And for all the people listening, we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode. Take care.
Thanks for having me, beautiful. Mwah.
Well, that is all for this week's episode of The Future with Friends. If you've enjoyed the episode and you want to support the show, the number one thing you can do is share it with your friends. In fact, it would give me no greater joy than to think in a small way the conversations I'm having with my friends could be a positive influence on the conversations that you are having with yours. Other ways to support the show include going onto the podcasting platform of your choice and giving us a rating. Obviously, I would like it to be 5 stars, but you should ultimately do whatever feels right for you. And if you don't feel quite ready for that yet, if we're not at that point in our relationship, the other thing you can do is send me small gifts in the mail. I always enjoy receiving them. Well, that is all for this week. We will be back in another couple of weeks with the next episode. And so until then, my friends, I look forward to seeing you again.